This week, I went to a meeting in Manhattan in the freezing cold. But when I came out of that meeting, I was frozen. Not from the bitter temperatures, but from fear. I learned things that no one is talking about. Things that can change my life, your life, and the lives of everyone you know forever. I started thinking about how fragile life is and how ill-prepared we are for this. The story I'm about to tell you is about the vulnerability of America's power system, our grid. And it's also about a series of forces and individuals who, instead of doing the right thing for you and me, are interfering with the ability to protect our way of life. Who of us could ever envision a 9/11 happening? But the difference between 9/11 and what I'm about to tell you is that we know this can happen. The question is not will it happen, but when will it happen? But Washington is doing little, if anything, to prevent it. And the consequences, those consequences would be 1,000,000 times worse than 9/11. One day you're enjoying the comforts of life. The next, everything is different. Civilization as you know it is gone. The death toll would be staggering. Even a blue ribbon congressional commission predicted a major catastrophe with mass American fatalities. And government studies prove an electromagnetic pulse would destroy all electronics and the transformers that power everything, anything, with an on-off switch. Your hot water heater, your refrigerator, your dialysis machine. Hospitals closed, grocery shelves empty. Most of the food you have at home spoiled. And forget about your bank accounts. What you have in your pocket is all you can access. The disaster that I'm talking about can be unleashed naturally by an intense solar flare or deliberately by an enemy detonating a nuclear weapon in the Earth's atmosphere. Now, the Earth is exposed to an intense solar flaring roughly every 150 years. The last time it occurred was 1859. Do the math. We're due. Reports are that our grid has already been penetrated by our enemies, leaving behind software programs that can compromise it. Now, I'm not saying this to panic anyone. But everyone, including our enemies, knows that an artificially created electromagnetic pulse will shut down all power, which risks our survival. And what's even more frightening is that this can be prevented. But as with most problems, greed, self-interest, and politicians who care more about their next election than the American people, and a total lack of leadership interfere with your safety. The shame is that the principal federal regulator who establishes standards for local power companies is also tasked with promoting the interest of the utilities. How do you regulate and promote private companies at the same time? Legislation intended to protect us has been blocked in Washington. The fight, of course, about money. Private companies, they control 85% of the grid, think the Department of Defense should pay to improve the infrastructure, and vice versa. There is one bill, though, that can help us prevent this catastrophe and remedy our vulnerability. And make no mistake, this can be remedied. And one person holds the keys to the kingdom. Congressman Fred Upton from Michigan is the chair of the House Energy Committee, where these kinds of laws are funneled. Bills that can protect us are bottled up in his committee. They shouldn't be. This is not a partisan issue. This should be recognized as one of the most important bills pending in Washington today. Curiously, though, almost 60% of Congressman Upton's campaign contributions are from electric utilities and lobbyists and oil and gas investors. In the interest of fairness, we've invited Congressman Upton to appear on the show for the last 4 weekends. He's declined, and his office didn't answer our request for a statement. So with me now is Arizona Congressman Trent Franks, who served as chairman of the Congressional Electromagnetic Pulse Caucus. Congressman, what is Congress doing about the grid?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for allowing me to be on your program. And Judge, I will just have to say to you that some of us are working very hard to try to address this issue. It's important to realize that EMP is not something that is some sort of a new discovery. This is something that some even would call a Cold War relic, since the Soviets had a major EMP weapon many, many years ago. The military has clear consensus on this. We've spent hundreds and hundreds of millions, perhaps by now in the billions of dollars, hardening our missile defense capability, our nuclear triad, many of our defense critical assets from this danger of electromagnetic pulse. The consent.
I don't mean to interrupt you, Congressman, but what is the problem with getting legislation passed that will protect the American people from this inevitable problem?
Well, as you may know, I'm carrying 2 bills even now and have worked very hard for the last several years to do exactly that. And the EMP Commission came before the Armed Services Committee, of which I am a member, and from that moment forward, I began to work on this issue. There are approximately 3 of us that have really taken the reins of the issue.
Who are the 3, Congressman? Yeah. Tell me.
Well, unfortunately, the other 2 are no longer in Congress.
Well, there you have it. Well, I'm here to help you, Congressman. This is a statement that the Department of Defense responded to Fox News when we asked about the dangers of an EMP. What the Department of Defense said was the department is unaware of any increase in the threat of a deliberate destructive use of an EMP device. Further, any reporting to the contrary by those without access to current threat assessments is reckless and irresponsible. Congressman, we know the grid's unprotected. Why aren't they doing something?
Well, keep in mind, if you listen to that statement carefully, they're talking about any increase, and I wouldn't really take any issue with that statement at all. The Department of Defense has been, I think, very forthright as best they could. The challenge here is that they've hardened their critical assets, but they are dependent upon the civilian grid for approximately 99% of their electricity needs here in this country. And so they are, in a sense, dependent on the civilian grid for their ability to affect their mission here in the continental United States.
But Congressman, doesn't that make it even more frightening that the military is dependent on this same grid?
Well, it frightens me greatly. The military is hardened where we on the civilian side are not, and that's what the SHIELD Act attempts to address. And the SIPA, which we call the Critical Infrastructure Protection Act, has now been assigned to the Homeland Security Committee, and I've been assured that that's going to get a hearing, and I have great hope and belief that it's going to pass.
All right, so Congressman, you talk about a SHIELD Act. That was passed, and then
no, the SHIELD Act was not passed.
It was not passed. I mean, it came
out. It was not
of,
passed.
But didn't the House pass it?
Yeah, you're talking about the GRID Act. I know there's a lot of nomenclature here. The GRID Act was passed unanimously out of the House. It went to the Senate, and the Senate, it had 2 elements to it, one being the EMP protection. It also had cybersecurity protection. And, of course, with 100 senators, they have different strategies on how to deal with cybersecurity, and that's what stopped the bill. And it was unfortunate, to say the very least.
Well, unfortunate.
I was a co-sponsor of that bill.
All right. Congressman, what can people do to get their legislators involved in this?
Well, from my perspective, if they could call their own members of Congress and ask them to support both the SHIELD Act and SIPA, the Critical Infrastructure Protection Act, that would help me greatly. I think that just by word of encouragement to Judge, I just came from London. I chair the World Summit on Electric Infrastructure Security, and a lot of the participants of that summit met with Lloyd's of London, in London, no less, and it encourages me because I think the insurance companies are understanding the danger here, and I think they're going to supply both the economic incentive and disincentive, if necessary, to get people to look at it as they should.
Congressman Franks, we're going to have you on again. We're going to follow this one. Thank you very much for being with us tonight. All right, good. And coming up, when the lights go out, will you survive? We'll tell you how this little device can increase your odds. Same one as last time. Now I'm holding it this way, holding it this way. Can you see it, Joel? Can you see this one?